Good evening and welcome to Gravitas. I'm Palki, Sharma, Upadhyay. Let's get started.
Minor incursion, and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do.
President Putin to desist and step back from Ukraine.
"2022 has barely begun and we are already dealing with a dangerous military standoff. Russia has amassed thousands of troops at Ukraine's doorstep. Today in Geneva, the United States and Russia held crisis talks, a desperate bid to de-escalate and end the threat of an invasion. There was no resolution though. The meeting ended with Russia handing America a list of demands. How did Moscow get the upper hand? Well, it was US President Joe Biden who handed the advantage with a gaffe. He practically invited Russia to undertake a minor incursion in Ukraine. That's what he called it, a blunder that has angered Kiev. But it has also exposed how divided the West can be over this standoff. They can't seem to be agreeing on how to proceed. Will these differences weaken Ukraine? Will Russia have its way eventually? Vladimir Putin is flexing his muscle. What are the options before Europe at this point? Is war inevitable? On Gravitas tonight, we'll discuss all of this. Also on the show, another East European country is standing up to China. Slovenia makes moves to deepen ties with Taiwan. China's propaganda machine has attacked its Prime Minister, Yanis Yansha. Boris Johnson's winter of woes is not ending anytime soon. After Partygate, his team has been accused of blackmailing MPs who criticize him. Are synthetic wombs the solution to the gender pay gap? It has been proposed and has met with mixed and strong reactions. And Venezuela's President Maduro is the latest to join the list of leaders who appear as animated superheroes. This one is called Super Moustache. We'll begin as always with Gravitas Global Headlines.
Washington and Moscow's top diplomats agree at high-stakes talks to keep working to ease tensions over Ukraine.
It can choose the path of diplomacy that can lead to peace and security, or the path that will lead only to conflict, severe consequences.
The United States promising a written response to Russian security demands next week. At least 17 people killed and 59 others injured by an explosion in western Ghana. A truck carrying explosive collided with a motorcycle, devastating parts of a town in western Ghana. The Islamic State terrorists have mounted a deadly attack on one of the largest detention facilities in northeast Syria. Prisoners rioted and tried to escape after a car bomb went off outside the prison. China and Russia have blocked the US efforts to impose UN sanctions on 5 North Koreans in response to recent missile launches by Pyongyang, after imposing sanctions on the 5 individuals. The French Parliament has passed a resolution declaring China's treatment of Uyghur Muslims a genocide. With this, France has now joined a list of other Western nations in labeling the Chinese atrocities. The United Nations has confirmed that active COVID cases and deaths have dropped in Africa for the first time since the 4th wave of the virus reached its peak. The newly reported cases have fallen by 20%, while confirmed COVID deaths have dropped by some 8%. Austria has become the first European country to approve mandatory COVID-19 vaccinations for adults, despite a wave of protests opposing the measure, while France will begin a gradual lifting of restrictions after reports suggest that infection rates are ebbing. Meatloaf, the flamboyant US rock star who rose to global fame with his debut Bat Out of Hell album, passes away, aged 74. Defending champion Naomi Osaka has crashed out of the Australian Open after a 3-set defeat to Amanda Anisimova in the third round. Osaka squandered a 1-set lead to lose to the world number 60. Anisimova will now face world number 1 Ashley Barty in the last 16. In the men's draw, Rafael Nadal overcame Karen Khachanov in 4 sets. India will lock horns with arch-rivals Pakistan in their ICC Men's T20 World Cup opener at the Melbourne Cricket Ground. The sport's governing body released the fixtures for the showpiece event, which will take place in Australia across October and November. The Super 12 stage will kick off with defending champions Australia facing New Zealand in a rematch of last year's final.
For more than a month now, we've been telling you about the tensions in Ukraine. There's a massive build-up. Tens of thousands of troops are staring each other down. Ukraine says it could be invaded by Russia. Europe says it is dangerously close to war. America says Russia could attack at short notice. Moscow blames the US and NATO for the tensions. It is a dangerous stalemate. Tonight, we'll take you inside the battleground. What's happening on the Russia-Ukraine border? We'll show you the standoff up close and tell you what's on the mind of Moscow. On Gravitas tonight, we are bringing you the most comprehensive report on the biggest military crisis of this year. First, let's show you what's happening on the battleground. Why is the West so worried? The reason is this. Look at these satellite images. They were clicked between December and January. What you see here are Russian deployments, and they're dangerously close to the Ukrainian border. This specific picture was taken just 10 miles away from the Ukraine border. 10 miles. These are Russian armored personnel carriers and trucks. Now look at this. Russian battle groups in Yelnya. Again, dangerously close to Ukraine. Russia is said to have deployed hundreds of these battle groups near the Ukrainian border. They've been given tents and housing. Russian soldiers are well equipped and they are training for combat. Russian soldiers clearly mean business there. What about the US? They have a very experienced president who shot off his mouth. 50 years in government, and this is what Joe Biden says. There could be a minor incursion by Russia that America is apparently prepared to tolerate. Listen to him.
I think what you're going to see is that Russia will be held accountable if it invades, and it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do.
This was a spectacular blunder. It sounded like an invitation to invade Ukraine. That one statement from Joe Biden set the cat among the pigeons. America's allies were upset. So within hours, the president was back in front of the camera to explain himself and contain the damage he had done.
There is no doubt, let there be no doubt at all, that if Putin makes this choice, Russia will pay a heavy price.
Not sure about Putin's choices, but Ukraine is certainly questioning its choice to bank on Biden. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had this message for Joe Biden. Allow me to read this for you. This is what he said. We want to remind the great powers that there are no minor incursions in small nations, just as there are no minor casualties and little grief from loss of loved ones. I say this as the president of a great power. The tweet ends with the Ukrainian flag. He's right. Diplomacy hinges on choice of words. One badly drafted statement, one off-the-cuff remark, and your entire strategy could go down the drain. The previous American president championed it. He turned foot and mouth into a fine art. Joe Biden is proving to be hardly better than Donald Trump and perhaps no match for Vladimir Putin. The Russian president was a judo champion, but over the last 2 decades, he's also aced the poker game of geopolitics. Experts believe Putin has three choices at this point. Number one, an all-out invasion of Ukraine. It's a costly choice. There will be mass casualties, economic and human. Plus, Russia may not be able to sustain it. NATO allies are sure to come to Ukraine's defense. So it will be a suicidal choice. Second option, Russia could target separatist-controlled areas of eastern Ukraine, try to annex those territories. Third option, launch an unconventional war, target Ukraine with cyber attacks, economic pressure and disinformation. A lot of it is already on. Last week, hackers sabotaged several Ukrainian government websites. Kiev said the cyber attack was Moscow's doing. At this point, Russia has the upper hand, a clear upper hand. It is dictating the terms of truce. A high-stakes meeting happened in Geneva today. Foreign ministers of Russia and the United States held talks. It ended without a resolution. No one expected one to start with. The only upside is that they'll continue talking. Russia presented a list of proposals. The US has 1 week to reply.
A breakthrough at this meeting either. We are expecting answers to our proposals. The proposals were very specific, so we are expecting concrete answers in line with the commitments that were made within the framework of the OSCE on the indivisibility of security.
So what does Vladimir Putin want? He's made three clear demands. One, Ukraine should not join the NATO. Two, the West must abandon military exercises. And three, weapon deployments in Eastern Europe should not be allowed. These are all demands, all of them, rejected by the West in the past, and there's nothing to suggest that they might be accepted now. In fact, Europe is deploying weapons and arming Ukraine as we speak. The United Kingdom has sent troops and weapons, 30 elite British troops and 2,000 anti-tank weapons. They've been delivered to Ukraine with a warning to Putin.
We know what lies down that path and the terrible toll in lives lost and human suffering it brings. That's why we urge President Putin to desist and step back from Ukraine before he makes a massive strategic mistake.
Earlier today, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson reached out to Germany. He spoke to German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Both leaders had a message for Russia. If Moscow invades, it will pay a quote-unquote considerable and serious price. What kind of price? The European Union is threatening more sanctions. None of it has swayed Moscow so far. In fact, it is doubling down. All the fleets of the Russian Navy are holding drills. And when I say all the fleets, I mean this. From the Pacific to the Atlantic, 140 warships and support vessels, 60 planes, 1,000 units of military hardware, and 10,000 servicemen. This is the scale we're talking about. Vladimir Putin is flexing his muscle as Biden and allies issue threats. Caught in the middle is Ukraine. It has thrown its lot with an unreliable America and a Europe that sits on the fence at the first opportunity and still relies on Russian gas very heavily, remember. Kiev's best bet is the success of diplomacy. That's because in geopolitics, we associate power with size. Russia is the big northern neighbor. Ukraine alone is no match for it. To be powerful, you must be large. A large population, a large army, but we often forget more important qualities. To be powerful, you also need courage and resolve. Qualities that Slovenia has aced. It's a country we rarely talk about, around 3 times smaller than Sri Lanka, 2 million citizens, a GDP of $52 billion, nothing extraordinary about those numbers. But what they lack in size, they make up in spirit. Slovenia is taking on China. They're challenging Beijing's gospel truth. Their one China policy. Taiwan and Slovenia are in talks to set up a representative office. Many are calling it a de facto embassy. Another European state, Lithuania, did the same last year, remember. Last year, this was what Lithuania did, and now Slovenia is following suit. And just to be clear, this is not official recognition. Slovenia's government is not recognizing Taiwan, but they do want a deeper relationship, more trade, more cultural exchanges, and more political synergy. Setting up an office is step one. Step two is lobbying for Taiwan. Slovenia's Prime Minister has criticized China's attempts to keep Taiwan out of the World Health Organization. He has also backed Taiwan's right to choose its own path. Listen to what he said. We support the sovereign decision of the Taiwanese people if they want to join China without any pressure. we will support it. But if the Taiwanese people want to live independently, we are here to support that position. Doesn't get clearer than that. Slovenia does not see Taiwan as a wayward province of China. It sees Taiwan as a sovereign country. As for Beijing, the Prime Minister had some tough words. Listen to this. Listen to this closely. I'm quoting, "It's difficult to listen to a capital with a one-party system lecturing about democracy and peace around the world." Well, someone had to say it. How is China responding to Slovenia's pivot? They have a twin strategy. The diplomats have one job, the state media has another. China's foreign ministry is calling these comments dangerous and shocking.
It's a dangerous statement made by the Slovenian leader, Prime Minister Janez Janša, that overtly challenges the One China principle and supports Taiwan independence. We are deeply shocked by this and strongly opposed to it.
The state media's response was more colourful. They're not attacking the policy, they're attacking the man behind it, Slovenia's Prime Minister Janez Janša. Here's what the Global Times wrote. Janša is a right-wing troublemaker who doesn't toe the line with the EU. Janša's political image has shown that he is a fringe politician. He's playing the Taiwan card to cover his troubled resume. We call this a smear piece. If you can't criticize the policy, criticize the person behind it. Low even by China's standards. Their desperation is understandable because Slovenia is not an isolated case. Many Central and East European nations are moving closer to Taiwan. Last month, Estonia, Lithuania and Latvia sent delegates to Taipei. They participated in Taiwan's Open Parliament Forum. A few days later, a delegation from Slovakia also arrived. It was the highest level diplomatic visit since the year 2003. Beijing has clearly seen the bigger picture here. East and Central Europe may not break the One China policy, but they want closer cooperation with Taiwan. The question is why? Why is Eastern Europe picking Taiwan over China? Well, we can think of two broad reasons. Number one is ideology. Eastern Europe is made up of former Soviet states, Estonia, Lithuania, Slovakia, Latvia. They were all part of the Soviet Union, remember? Their politicians grew up fighting communist Russia. They know what it means to live under a one-party dictatorship. In other words, what Taiwan is experiencing today, these states experienced in the 1980s. Fighting communism is in their DNA. Reason number two, they can afford to antagonize China. These numbers should tell you why. From 2000 to 2019, China invested $129 billion in Europe. Out of this, only 10 billion went to Central and Eastern Europe. This pattern makes perfect sense. Western Europe is saddled with Chinese money, so they're hesitant to take on Beijing. But Eastern Europe has no such hamstrings. Take Slovakia, for instance. Only 1% of its GDP comes from Chinese investments. In Lithuania, only 1% of their trade is linked to China. On the other hand, Taiwan is an attractive partner. Countries like the Czech Republic and Lithuania are focusing on technology like 5G, semiconductors. And guess who's a world leader in modern tech? Taiwan. It's a perfect strategic match, one that these countries may not be able to challenge China. But put together, they are a big political and economic force. Plus, they're members of the European Union and NATO, so that's economy, strategy and military check. Everyone believed that Eastern Europe would roll the red carpet for China. They would be seduced by Chinese money. Turns out the opposite is happening. Europe's big power should take lessons from these states. They've dismantled a communist empire before. Maybe they should take the lead again. Over in India, a political storm is brewing over the relocation of the Amar Jawan Jyoti, an eternal flame that has been burning since 1971 to honor the valor of the Indian Armed Forces. This afternoon, it was merged with another flame at the National War Memorial near the India Gate. This move has been met with mixed reactions. Critics say it's an insult to Indian traditions. Army veterans say it was long overdue. Here's a report.
has been burning since 1971. It pays homage to India's fallen soldiers, and its iconic sight has inspired generations of Indians. The Amar Jawan Jyoti, or the Eternal Flame, is etched strongly in the emotional psyche of the entire country. Every year, India's Republic Day parades start with the visuals of this flame, instilling a sense of pride over the Indian armed forces. This year, the flame has been shifted to a new address. It has been relocated to a site barely 400 meters away from India Gate. Another iconic monument built in 2019 to honor the sacrifice of Indian soldiers. On Friday afternoon, the Amar Jawan Jyoti was emerged with the eternal flame at this war memorial. Several army veterans, including former chiefs of the armed forces, have welcomed the move, but it has also triggered political furor. Opposition parties say the flame has been extinguished. They're calling it an insult to Indian history and traditions. Also to the soldiers who lay down their lives for the country. The government says it's not. It says the flame has not been extinguished, but has only been merged. The question is, why was this necessary? There are several reasons being cited by the government. The first one is the fact that India Gate, where Amar Jyoti was originally located, was built by the British to honor Indian soldiers who fought for Britain in the First World War. The government says this makes the site a symbol of India's colonial past. The second reason is the fact that out of the 83,000 soldiers who died in Britain's military campaigns, only the names of 13,516 were inscribed on India Gate. The Amar Jawan Jyoti was inaugurated in 1972 by then Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. The aim was to honor Indian soldiers who died in the 1971 Indo-Pakistan War. The National War Memorial, on the other hand, has the names of all Indian soldiers who laid down their lives before and after 1971. This makes it an all-encompassing monument for the Indian Army. And lastly, since 2020, all ceremonial events of the Indian Army have been shifted to the War Memorial. For instance, every Republic Day, a wreath used to be placed at the Amar Jawan Jyoti to honor the valor of dead and unknown soldiers. But since 2020, the Prime Minister, the President, and the 3 service staff chiefs lay the wreath at the National War Memorial instead. The memorial was promised to the armed forces in the 1960s, but was only approved by the Modi government in 2015. Some veterans say this delay by successive governments in building the memorial was disrespectful to the army, not the merging of the eternal flames. The debate continues. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
In the United Kingdom, the government is falling apart. Boris Johnson's position as Prime Minister is becoming untenable. Every day a new scandal hits the British government. Now a senior lawmaker has levied a serious charge. Downing Street is apparently intimidating lawmakers. William Bragg has made this claim. He is one of the lawmakers who wants Boris Johnson to quit. He says he was intimidated and blackmailed. He was told not to speak out against the Prime Minister.
Reports to me and others of members of staff at number 10 Downing Street, special advisers, government ministers and others encouraging the publication of stories in the press seeking to embarrass those who they suspect of lacking confidence in the Prime Minister is similarly unacceptable. The intimidation of a Member of Parliament is a serious matter.
Indeed, this is a serious matter, and RAG is not the only one. Another lawmaker has claimed that they were threatened. Christian Wakeford is a Labour Party MP. He had earlier defected from the Conservatives. He was told that he'll be denied a high school in his constituency if he goes against Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
Was threatened that I would not get the school for Radcliffe if I didn't vote one particular way. This is a town that's not had a high school for the best part of 10 years. And how do you feel when holding back a regeneration of a town for a vote?
Lockdown parties are one thing, but threatening lawmakers is serious abuse of power. Who is making these threats? The Chief Whip, Mark Spencer, is said to be involved, along with junior whips. A new report has come out. It says the rebel Conservative MPs recorded a conversation secretly. It was with one of the whips. And what's in the recording? Proof of intimidation, apparently. The lawmakers were told that their constituencies will lose funding. Government aides were deployed to conduct a smear campaign against rebels. They went to the press and made unsubstantiated claims against the MPs, things like drinking habits and stories about their personal lives. These are all shocking allegations. Let me read out one of the exchanges for you. This is what it says. They pulled me over and I told them I was voting against them. They got right up in my face. They told me that if you think you're getting a single penny, forget it. If you think a minister is coming to your patch, forget it. You're done. This is not the conduct of a lawmaker. This is the conduct of a thug. So what is Boris Johnson's defense? It did not happen. He says he has seen no proof of intimidation yet.
No evidence, heard no evidence to support any of those allegations, Anushka, and what I'm focused on is what we're doing to deal with the number one priority of the British people, which is coming through COVID.
The Prime Minister sidestepped the question, but the British Parliament is not ignoring this. The allegations of intimidation were discussed in the House of Commons. The opposition continues to relentlessly attack the Prime Minister. One of the MPs compared Boris Johnson to a mafia boss. Even the Speaker of the House could not stay quiet. He's asked the lawmakers to speak to him if they were intimidated.
There are allegations about the conduct of whips and special advisers working for ministers. Those who work for them are not above the criminal law.
So what will Boris Johnson do now? Distance himself from the allegations. But just like Partygate, the scandal also could catch up with the Prime Minister. The next few days are going to be critical. An investigation is underway into the lockdown parties at 10 Downing Street. The report is expected next week, and the outcome of this investigation could determine the political future of Boris Johnson. He's under immense pressure to quit. 6 Conservative MPs have publicly declared no confidence in Johnson. The Prime Minister's popularity has hit rock bottom. A poll came out recently. Nearly 2 out of 3 Britons want Boris Johnson out. The mood is tense in Westminster. Reports say the Prime Minister is anxious about the outcome of the investigation. Johnson fears that he will have to face a no-confidence vote. Downing Street is denying these reports, but defending Boris Johnson is becoming one of the hardest jobs in the UK. And speaking of hard jobs, several pet owners in Hong Kong are being forced to give away their hamsters. Hong Kong is culling nearly 2,000 hamsters over fears of Wuhan virus infection. Import and sale of these little animals has been suspended. Even hamsters testing negative for the virus are being put to sleep. Here's a report.
These little pet homes are waiting for their furry residents. Oh, look, here comes one. This little fellow was abandoned by its owner. He is not alone. Several hamsters in Hong Kong have been dumped in the last week. The betrayal is a result of a cluster outbreak. It began with a pet store. This one, the Little Boss. One of its employees tested positive for the Wuhan virus. A customer he had interacted with tested positive too, as did 11 hamsters at the pet store. It was later found that the employee was infected with the Delta variant. Panic set in, and so did concerns of a possible animal-to-human transmission. In America, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says there is no proof of an animal-to-human transmission of the Wuhan virus. But this is Hong Kong, the city-state controlled by China and hence obsessed with its zero-COVID strategy. There is absolutely no room for risks. Hong Kong wasted no time in announcing a cull.
There's a possibility that the people were infected by the hamsters or small animals. We hope to cut this possible transmission source as soon as possible.
At least 2,000 tiny animals will now be put to sleep. This will include hamsters and chinchillas. All pet stores selling hamsters have been told to give up the animals. All hamsters bought post 22nd of December need to be handed over too. Many Hong Kongers are heartbroken. A lot of them had gifted hamsters to their children during the holiday season. Parting with these playful pets won't be easy, so they have taken to social media to protest. Online petitions have been signed, but the administration will have none of it. This is the office of the Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department. This is where hamster owners are dropping off their fur buddies.
What can I do? They just took my hamster. Actually, no one knows if it's got any problem. I should know, but now I will never know. I feel helpless.
The hamsters testing negative will be culled too. Some Hong Kongers are also dropping off hamsters bought before the 22nd of December. They are too scared to share their space with hamsters. These animal lovers have lined up to rescue those abandoned hamsters. These little ones are all set to go to their new homes. This is not the first culling we've seen in this pandemic. In 2020, Denmark culled 17 million minks. Some minks had contracted the Wuhan virus from humans. Denmark said the virus had mutated in the animals and then spread back to humans. And so, no mink was spared. Denmark killed the infected and healthy ones alike. Again, there was no proof of an animal-to-human transmission. But these creatures haven't been given the benefit of the doubt. If they could speak, they would protest. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Imagine you could see the future. What would your first move be? Maybe check on your family or check on your future self. But after all the personal errands, what would you do? How about making some money? If you could see the future, you can beat the stock market. You will know which stocks will grow and which stocks will tank. Unfortunately, or fortunately, nobody can see the future. But some people can influence it. I'm talking about lawmakers. They know what policies are in the pipeline. They know which industry is getting a subsidy. And with that knowledge, they can beat the stock market. The question is, should this be allowed? In the United States, they do it all the time. Lawmakers can trade all they want. It's a free market for all. But the problem is, they have an unfair edge. I'll give you an example. In January 2020, a group of US senators was briefed about the Wuhan virus pandemic. By then, the picture was quite clear. America would be overwhelmed by thousands of infections. Guess what these senators did? They dashed to Wall Street on the same day. Senator Kelly Loeffler made 27 transactions. She sold stocks worth around $3 million. Senator David Perdue made 112 transactions. He sold stocks worth $825,000, plus he bought shares for $1.8 million. Guess which company he bought? DuPont, a firm that makes PPE kits. And these are not isolated cases. In 2021, more than 100 lawmakers were heavy traders. Their total transactions reached $290 million. Simply put, they beat the market. I know it sounds too outrageous to be true. Surely there are laws to regulate this. Well, there is a law. It's called the Stock Act of 2012. What does it say? That every lawmaker and their spouse must disclose their trades. what they bought, what they sold, all of it. But the problem is nobody follows this law. 29 members of Congress violated the Stock Act in 2021. Their excuses were hilarious. Clerical errors, they said, lazy accountants and oversights. What was their punishment for these so-called oversights? $200, that's all. Even that fine is waived off by the Senate or the House in most cases. So asking lawmakers to publish these trades is not enough because they still have a head start. Take Nancy Pelosi, for instance, the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. She's a Wall Street legend of sorts. Her trades are debated and published on TikTok and Twitter. Do you know where Nancy Pelosi invested her money? Apple and Amazon, around $5 to $25 million each. Pelosi's Democrats grill big tech CEOs at congressional hearings, but the same Pelosi is betting millions on big tech. Even if we ignore the money, this is a massive breach of trust. So some American lawmakers are proposing a solution, a ban on trading. How would that work? All lawmakers will have to put their portfolio in a blind trust. They can't make trades. They cannot use classified information to make money. It sounds like a good idea, but senior lawmakers are not on board, like Wall Street legend Nancy Pelosi again. She's personally opposed to a ban on trading. Her argument is this: America is a free market economy, so all Americans should be able to buy and sell shares. I agree. America is a free market economy, but she's forgetting one key principle of free markets: information. Unless everyone has the same information, you cannot call it a free market. Here, that's not the case. Lawmakers are privy to major policy decisions. Will there be lockdowns? Will there be a subsidy on steel? Will there be a tax on big tech? The public does not have this kind of information. The lawmakers do. So this is not a free market system. It's a form of insider trading. Both Republicans and Democrats benefit from this setup. So nobody wants to upset the apple cart. Not even President Joe Biden. His lawmakers are making millions from classified information. But Biden's response is this: you guys decide. It's the same situation in most countries, in fact. There is no explicit ban on lawmakers trading, but there are caveats. If you're privy to price-sensitive information, then your trades are illegal. That's what the law says here in India too. But like most financial regulations, they're vague. What is price-sensitive information? What is the method to investigate this? What about surrogate traders? This is not a big debate elsewhere in the world, but in America it's a lightning rod. A, because Americans invest a lot more in shares, and B, their do-or-die obsession with the free market. $290 million is a lot of money. It can be alluring. It may look like easy money, but last we checked, Capitol Hill is spelled with an O, not an A. And here's a story straight out of science fiction: replacing human pregnancies with artificial wombs. I know the idea sounds dystopian, but it may be a fast-approaching reality. Dutch scientists are working on it. Influential people are promoting it, like the co-founder of cryptocurrency Ethereum. He recently pitched synthetic wombs as a solution to the income disparities between men and women. He said they could reduce the burden of pregnancy and help women earn equally at their workplaces. Interestingly, he made the suggestion to Tesla CEO Elon Musk. Why did he reach out to Musk? Our next report tells you.
Meet Vitalik Buterin, the co-founder of Ethereum, the second best cryptocurrency after Bitcoin. The 27-year-old inventor has pitched a bold solution to end the economic disparities between men and women, and also to prevent our planet from a population collapse. He wants to replace pregnant women with synthetic wombs, a proposal that has drawn the wrath of feminists. Buterin shared this techno-utopian solution in a Twitter exchange with the ultimate tech visionary Elon Musk. Of late, the Tesla tycoon has been expressing his concerns about an impending global population collapse. He's been sharing tweets about falling birth rates the world over, which Musk says won't leave enough people for his relocation plans to Mars. Buterin chimed in to Musk's complaints online with a controversial solution: synthetic wombs. He even shared a graph to justify his views. It pointed out how women's earnings drop significantly after a child, but for men, they remain unchanged. Synthetic wombs, according to him, can remove the high burden of pregnancy and reduce income disparities. This wild suggestion has split the internet. While some have welcomed it, the others are calling it crazy. Those in favor say they would love to have more options and prioritize their health. Some others say that it would help them escape an environment where men condition women. And yet others think that bearing child the exact same way women have forever is just deeply regressive. Those against synthetic wombs say women do not need to defy the laws of nature to be treated equally. They say pregnancy connects them to the natural world like nothing else, and that synthetic wombs would be the same as growing new species in a lab. The debate continues, but the question is, can we really make a synthetic womb? Well, we already are. Scientists in the Netherlands say they are just 10 years away from developing an artificial womb that could save the lives of premature babies. Premature birth is said to be the biggest cause of death among newborns. Dutch researchers say that an artificial uterus could solve this problem. The technology sounds promising, but there are still ethical dilemmas to overcome. Will the technology only be used in emergency situations, or will it also be available for those mulling an abortion? Will it be available for all individuals or only for those who can afford it? And above everything else, is letting machines replicate every human element of life.
Leaving you with Gravitas Images. Thanks for watching.